Just wanted to get your seats. The mic's not working. It is now.
Yes, yes.
Well, now that everybody's calmed down and settled down, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Lydia Wilson. It is nerve-wracking to be in front of a microphone again instead of Zoom. Yay! We love being in front of you instead of a camera. This is the first time in 2 years we've been able to have an annual meeting in person. And first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for coming out. It makes us feel appreciated, and we're looking forward to hearing your comments. So, since this is the first time we've done this in 2 years, just a couple of housekeeping notes. First was test the mic, and I understand everybody can hear me. Second is, if you have a phone on you, please put it on silent. It's one of those things we forget to do. Even on Zoom, we forget to do that. The cards on your seat are for questions, so please use them as we go along. When you've filled one out, just raise it up and one of the staff members will come and get it. I ask you to put your name on it as well, so that if we don't have time at the end, it is a packed full agenda today, and if we don't get to everyone's question, I promise you we will follow up with answers. And we are recording this meeting, and both the slides and the recording will be available on the website. So with all of that housekeeping away, we'll get started. What we're going to cover today, as I said, is a lot of information. Chris Herbershon will follow my opening remarks with our financial results, followed by Susanna Johnston with a project update. Now you will all notice as well that John Miller is back.
Yay!
And thank you for being back. But the work in advance of this meeting for getting the slides together and helping Mike, Jody, myself, and Chris with our slides all fell onto Susanna, so John felt it was best if she still presented everything, since she has been doing all the work and doing a great job of it. So while I'm doing that, let's just After the project update, we will have the results of our second annual membership survey results, and that's going to be introduced by Jody Rolfe and Mike Morin, who is from Club Benchmarking, and then Susanna as well will talk about action plans. So just briefly, the current board is in front of you. Everyone can wave with the exception of Dale Todd, who unfortunately was away on a trip. But the rest of us are here. If you had questions, I'm sure we will be around a little bit afterwards as well. I also want to thank every one of the committee volunteers. There's a lot of people who donate their valuable time and energy to make this community the great community that it is. If any of the committee volunteers are here today, just raise your hand so we can acknowledge you. Thank you all very much. Very briefly, some 2021 key performance highlights. We exceeded our financial goals, of course, thanks to a really great hot real estate market. We finally lifted those lovely COVID restrictions on May 10th. I think some people feel like they were here for 20 years. They were here for about a year and a half, but it was a year and a half too long if you ask anybody in the room. Our Clubhouse renovation project was approved, and Susanna will cover this shortly in more detail. And finally, we applied for and was granted the COVID employee retention credit. So that was excellent work on Payman's job and his staff, along with our audit committee and our audit team. And we continue to deal with the area-wide employment issues began by COVID and just continues today. 2022 focus, just going to highlight a couple of the key areas. Our job is to direct and support the proactive maintenance and selective asset renewal of Moss Creek's amenities, facilities, and infrastructure. So the big projects this year, and they are big projects, include the Clubhouse, finalizing the pickleball courts, the South Golf Course renovation, and road work, road and leisure trail work. We're also developing a master plan for Boxwood Point Park, which would include the marina, pavilion, fitness, and dining options. And this would be incorporated into the revised strategic plan next year. For those of you who don't know, the strategic plan is updated every 3 years. The financial 5-year plan is updated on a rolling basis. But every 3 years, we update that strategic plan. And that's why it's so important for us to have this groundwork done this year. We also look to maintain our financial stability and ensure adequate capitalization. That involves adequate reserves and emergency funding, and of course, keeping an eye on the reasonable increases planned for HOA fees. We look to ensure the safety and security of the community. Ongoing issue is with speeding, and we've asked Chief Albano to come forward with some suggestions as to how we can address that, and options to improve the perimeter security. Our natural environment is very important to us, and we look to protect that natural environment. And the Greens and Grounds Committee, along with the Nature Club, is looking at deep dive into the pond health review. And I want to thank everybody who's been involved in that. And finally, be a proactive communications conduit among management committees and members. So hopefully you're seeing an overall increase in communications, not only written, but in person. Again, thank you for being here. And finally, a technology, infrastructure, and member website functionality and content review. We all know we live in the web world, if you will, and the better we can make that website for our members, the easier it is for all of us to share information. So just closing my comments before I turn it over to Chris, we're continuously looking at ways to keep the membership satisfied and engaged with our amenities and our social offerings. Of course, we do this while maintaining a close eye on our resources, both short-term and long-term. It's a difficult balance to achieve, and often decisions aren't ones embraced by everyone, but doing what's best for the majority of the membership is at the heart of everything we do. I'd like to now turn the presentation over to Chris Herbershon, our board treasurer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Herbershon, and it is an absolute pleasure to speak with you today as the treasurer of your board. Here is an overview of what I intend to cover today. Number one, I will give a summary of the roles of our Finance Committee and our Audit Committee and introduce the members of each committee that volunteer their time and expertise on our behalf. Number two, I will give a summary of our financial health at the end of 2021. Here are the descriptions of the main responsibilities of the Finance Committee. I won't go through the list item by item, but will highlight the main ones. The focus of our Finance Committee is to ensure that the decisions and actions we make always support the Moss Creek mission. Quote, to provide an exceptional mix of services and amenities that enhance the appeal, value, and quality of life for our members, end quote, while protecting the assets of our association. One of our main responsibilities is to closely monitor and review monthly financial performance versus budget. Should we discover significant variances, it is our responsibility to advise the board if corrective action is required. Annually, we conduct a comprehensive review of our insurance policies and employee benefit programs and make recommendations for adjustment if needed. We also monitor progress and expenditures for our capital projects to ensure performance meets obligations. Our role also requires us to work closely with the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee as it develops project plans and timelines. Finally, we analyze financial projections and make recommendations to the board regarding the 2023 budget. A special thank you to the members of the Finance Committee for volunteering their time and expertise to the panel. Do we have any members of the Finance Committee here? Audit Committee as well? A couple, very good. Thank you for being here. We have a committee this year steeped in knowledge and expertise, and I am delighted to work with such a capable and competent group. Next slide. Cool. All right. Financial stability and integrity has been cited as a major reason why people move to our community, and we are determined to make certain that our resources are carefully managed and utilized to assure us that we remain financially stable in the future. As part of this process, we contract with an independent audit firm to perform an annual review of our records. Posted on the website for review are our audited financial statements for 2021. The objective of the audit is to obtain an independent assessment of Moss Creek's year-end financial statements, focusing on revenue, expenses, and changes in member equity and cash flow. This year's audit concluded that our financial statements accurately reflect the financial position of the Moss Creek Owners Association. The audit process is supervised by Moss Creek's Audit Committee, whose functions and duties are defined by our laws and policy statements. Many thanks to the volunteer members of this committee who share their expertise with our community. The 2021-2022 Audit Committee was chaired by Dick Obrig, and the 2022-2023 committee is chaired by Dick Obrig as well. Of special note are the efforts of the highly competent Moss Creek accounting staff working behind the scenes to make certain that all financial statements and documentation are completed according to accepted financial standards and announcements, and in a professional, responsive, and timely fashion. Thank you to Payman Shanlu, our Controller and Chief Financial Officer, as well as his staff. We are in very good financial shape. We have a strong balance sheet. The total cash at the end of 2021 was $11.5 million, including reserves and restricted cash. We have an adequate reserve account. The 2021 operating income exceeded budget. 2021 non-operating income also exceeded budget. Member equity increased by 10%. It is important to note member equity is a balance sheet item, which is simply community assets minus community liabilities. It is not something any one member can sell a share of on the open market. It's important to note that. So now let's look at our 2021 operating income. As you can see, we are an $11 million business. The 2021 operating revenue totaled $11.3 million, which was greater than budgeted operating revenue by $476,000. Expenses totaled $10.8 million, $127,000 over budget. The total operational surplus at year end was $551,000, $349,000 greater than our budgeted operating surplus. We use this operating surplus in addition to our non-operating income to pay debt, pay into our reserve funds, and to pay for additional projects and amenity enhancements. This is a graphical breakdown of where our operating revenues come from. The top 5 revenue generators for our community are HOA dues at 49.5%, Water Oak Utility at 13.9%, Food and Beverage at 10.7%, Golf Operations at 9.8%, and the activity fee at 6.6%. These top 5 categories account for 90.5% of our community's operating revenue. This is a graphical breakdown of where our operating expenses go. The top 5 expenses were wages and salaries at 47.8%, employee benefits at 12.1%, outside rentals, services, and leases at 7.6%, materials and supplies and equipment at 6.4%, and water purchases at 4.5%, tied with general and administrative expenses at 4.5%. These top 5 categories account for 82.9% of our community's operating expenses. It's also worth noting that employee-related costs account for just about 60% of our operating expenses. Non-operating revenues primarily driven by membership certificate fees on home sales. We experienced greater than anticipated home sales in 2021, which will come as a surprise to absolutely nobody. Certificate fee income generated by 107 home sales was greater than budget by $976,000. Crazy. We had a total of 107 home sales, 93 of which generated certificate fee income. Although we had robust home sales in 2021 with non-operating revenue dependent on home sales during the year, this source of income is unpredictable and thus undependable. 2021 reserve fund and new capital spending, the top four are replacement, repairs, and maintenance and capital new projects in 2021 were golf courses, the golf maintenance building, the racket center, which is basically pickleball, and the clubhouse. In total, we experienced a net surplus of $3.6 million, which was utilized to pay down debt and fund our reserve requirements. In 2021, we also allocated $50,000 to an emergency fund and allocated $1.9 million to the reserve fund. We invested $1,183,000 in reserve, maintenance, and capital spending. This is funded by the balance of our net income, reserve funds, and unrestricted cash. At year end, we had a zero balance on our line of credit and $966,000 on our new equipment loan for a total debt level of $966,000. Our balance sheet certainly can and has in the past supported much higher debt levels should the need arise. I want to take a minute to talk about our equipment loan. We purchased our golf course maintenance equipment and golf carts in lieu of leasing them. We realize a tax advantage by purchasing versus leasing. We trade much of our golf course maintenance equipment and all of our golf carts in every 3 years. 2019 was the year of that transaction. In doing so, we pay off the old loan and take out a new loan on the new balance after the trade-in value of our equipment. By rotating golf maintenance equipment, we realize a substantial savings in ongoing maintenance. Older equipment requires substantial repairs, and over time that becomes very costly. Now the fun part, which is cash. We concluded the year in a positive fashion from a cash perspective. As indicated on the screen, we had $5.1 million in unrestricted cash, a total of $175,000 in restricted cash, $50,000 in an emergency fund, and $6.1 million in the reserve fund for a grand total of just over $11.5 million. And we have prudently built this surplus ahead of what will be significant spend over the next year on Clubhouse, or next 4 years, on Clubhouse, roads, and golf course capital outlays. During 2021, assets increased by $3 million and the members' equity increased by $2.2 million, an increase of about 10%. Focusing on 2022, our budgeted operating revenues, which combines the HOA fees with other revenue items such as the activity fee, cart fees, and daily greens fees, is expected to total $11.2 million. Expenses for 2022 are budgeted to be just over $11 million. When compared to 2021 actual expenses of $10.8 million, the 2022 budgeted amount represents an increase of about $300,000. This reflects the amount that was recommended by the Finance Committee. On the non-operating side, again driven by home sales, the Finance Committee adopted a recommendation in 2022 to allocate $1 million from HOA fees to non-operating revenues to minimize any potential shortfall in certificate income. This allocation and certificate income from property transactions and other non-operating revenues are budgeted to be $2.2 million. The non-operating revenues reduced by interest expense and other non-operating expenses result in an expected surplus of $2 million. Non-operating revenue is dependent on the number of property transactions during the year, and we developed our budget in this area anticipating 60 home sales for the year. That is consistent with our historical long-term trends. For 2022, the total operating and non-operating surplus is budgeted to be about $2.3 million. Of course, it is still early in the year, and our actual results may vary from the budget. This concludes my presentation, and I would like to now introduce Susanna Johnston, our Assistant General Manager.
Good afternoon. I'm Susanna Johnston, the Assistant General Manager, and I've been serving as the Interim General Manager as John Miller has been out. We're happy to have him back as of yesterday, and we're glad he is here with us today. Linnea asked me to update the membership on our 4 major projects, and lastly, at the end, I will introduce our management team. I will start on the project that everyone has been waiting on, the Clubhouse renovation. As John has noted in earlier communications to the membership, in early March, We had to find a new general contractor for the project, as the one we had been working with during the design phase, during all the preliminary work scope, decided to withdraw from the project. We were able to reach an agreement with Fraser Construction to be the general contractor, and we have been working with them over the last few months. They are currently in the process of bidding the project with subcontractors. They have submitted the permit application with Beaufort County and are waiting on feedback from the county. We anticipate having the pricing and construction schedule soon. The plan is to close the clubhouse for operations on May 1st. Beverage operations at Mackey will start on May 2nd, and food operations will start on or before May 10th. Mackey Creek Grill will be open 7 days a week during the clubhouse closure. During the first week or so after the clubhouse closure, our staff is needed to empty the entire clubhouse of all contents, including the attic. If you've been up in the attic, you're feeling my pain right now, I'm sure. In addition to moving food supplies to Mackey for operations, we have kitchen equipment that needs to be relocated to the original Mackey Creek Grill that has been placed behind the new grill in order to support the food operations. We continue to receive questions and concerns about employment for our food and beverage employees during the renovation. We have always stated that our concern will be to have hours for our full-time staff. We have reviewed our operations schedule and fully expect to be able to offer our full-time employees comparable hours, and our service staff will be working in areas where they will continue to have gratuities. In addition to operating Mackey Creek Grill 7 days a week, we will be utilizing staff on beverage carts on the golf courses, with special events at the Boxwood Pavilion or the park area, and scheduled cookouts on the range. We will also be utilizing staff in other amenity areas, mainly fitness and pool and golf operations. Many of our part-time employees already have full-time jobs and understand the limitation of hours during the renovation, but they have all expressed the desire to come back upon our reopening. We've also had questions about the availability of restroom facilities for golfers during the renovation. We've discussed this with the contractor and asked him to prepare the bid and construction schedule based on renovating the locker rooms first, while keeping the restrooms near the front of the clubhouse available. Once the locker rooms are finished, they will be open for use, and the rest of the building will be closed for renovation. We know that many of you use the clubhouse for more than food and beverage, meetings, cards, and other activities. And we've already started getting numerous requests for reserving meeting areas either at the pavilion, the pool, or the administration office. Please remember that the Boxwood Pavilion is already being used for some of our fitness classes due to size and limitation of our current group exercise room in the fitness center. But we will do our best to accommodate other group requests as schedules permit. We are arranging with other communities for reciprocal dining, and we will share more information on that service shortly. We have started a frequently asked questions list, and as we get additional questions, we will update this and post to the projects in progress page. That is on the member website if you've not been there. Before leaving this project, I do want to express our gratitude to our food and beverage staff who have been working nonstop for the last several months. This clubhouse has been busy. They've done a great job, and they're owed a special thank you. Jim, please pass that on to your staff tomorrow, because I think most of them have left for the day. Next. Pickleball courts. I know everyone is anxious for the finalization of phase 1 of the pickleball project. In mid-March, the board authorized additional funds to be added to the project to install lighting. Staff had already installed the conduit for the lights prior to the asphalt installation in anticipation of lights being added in phase 2. The light poles are on order, and I received an email prior to this meeting that they will be shipping April 28th, and that they should be here by the end of the month. That's April, not May. Staff have already installed the anchor bolts, and we are continuing to work on the project as we wait for delivery of the light poles. The fencing has been installed along with portions of the screening. There is still some fencing work to be completed. The site contractor was here yesterday finalizing the sidewalk and pads for seating areas and cleaning up the area, the whole site area. We still have some landscaping to do down there as well. Once the light poles are installed, the court contractor will finalize the court surface and install the nets. Katie Ruth and Melissa Shear are working on a grand opening event that will include a pro exhibition and chance for the membership to participate as well. We will set a date for this event as we get closer to a completion date. The plan is to have this on a Saturday afternoon. I can't tell you that much. Once the courts are open, the racket staff is planning on having complimentary introduction clinics each day for the first 3 to 4 weeks and repeat monthly as needed. The Racket Center will also have some pickleball equipment on hand for members to try out the sport. South Course improvements. The first part of this project is to start the replacement of the irrigation system. The contractor has been on site for several weeks, and the majority of the irrigation pipe has been moved to the area where it will be installed. The contractor has begun fusing the pipe in place, and they are waiting on the all clear from no cuts so that they can begin the mainline installation. There may be situations where a golf hole may need to be closed over the next several weeks, and the golfers will be notified through 4Ts if this needs to happen. This course is scheduled to close on May 16th. The second part of the project will be the course renovation, which includes work on the tees and greens. In order to prepare the greens for grassing, the existing greens will need to be sprayed with herbicide on May 2nd. It will take 5 to 7 days for the grass to start dying. The greens will still be playable following the herbicide application, and you can expect the greens to be hard and fast the last week that the course is open. So prepare that. For safety purposes, there will be no access to the south course during the closure. This is very important. No pedestrian traffic, including dog walking, no bicycles, no fishing. The course will be closed to everything but the contractors and our employees. Signage will be displayed at all course openings adjacent to roadways. During the closure, tee times will be available starting at 8 a.m. on the north course on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sunday. Shotgun starts will be held at 9 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays, with tee times starting at 2 p.m. The driving range will be open Tuesday through Sunday. The driving range and north course will be closed on Mondays. If needed, staff will add additional shotgun days, but in reviewing the usage data for June, July, and August from prior years, they feel the schedule will be adequate. The golf professional staff will be on the course frequently to monitor pace of play. The professional staff is finalizing arrangements for reciprocal play with area clubs and will have the list posted on 4T's homepage and sent to the membership within the next week. They are also working on a schedule with area golf courses to reserve 4 tee times for play days with the pros. This will allow 14 members to play with 2 of our pros. This schedule will also be published soon. Road paving. We've been working with Ward Edwards Engineer and planning the bid package for the paving project for this year. This year's paving will be a combined project for the 2021 paving plus the 2022 paving. In addition to the road paving, the bid project will include areas identified by the engineering firm and our staff that need repair for root damage and shoulder erosion. We expect to have the bid package finalized within the next several weeks so that it can go out to contractors for their bid submissions. Roads that are included in the bid package are Catbrier Lane, Wax Myrtle Lane and Court, Buttonbush Lane, Spartina Point, Cedar Lane, Cedar Court, parts of Timber Lane, Toppin Drive, Saw Timber Drive, and Devil's Elbow in front of the clubhouse. In addition to the paving, we will also be adding leisure trails in some areas as designed by our landscape architect. The leisure trails proposed for the streets being paved this year are referred to as road trailways. This is simply adding striping on our existing roadway to delineate pedestrian and bike activity. There's currently $1.45 million budgeted for the project. If the contractor bids come in over budget, we will need to review the list of streets that I mentioned and possibly push a few forward into next year's paving project. So once we know more, we'll let you know more. Lastly, I would like to introduce our management team and thank them and our entire management team for their hard work for the community over the last year. They have dealt with trying to keep everything going amid COVID, a difficult employee market, delays in materials and supplies, and also continuing their own families and dealing with things going on with kids still in school or not in school, and as well. So I know you join me in thanking them for their dedication to serving the membership at Moss Creek. In addition to John and myself, our management team consists of, and please stand when I call your name, and if you'll just hold the applause to the end. Katie Ruth, our Director of Racket Sports. Tom Lowe, our Director of Golf. Jim O'Connor, Clubhouse Manager. Mike Pallmeyer, Director of Fitness and Wellness. Jim Albano, our Chief of Security. Mitchell Wilkerson, Director of Golf and Grounds Maintenance. Roger Ward, Water Oak Utility Manager. Pinckney Crosby, Facilities Maintenance Manager. Payman Shamlou, our Controller. And Karen Davidson, our Human Resource Manager. Now I would like to introduce Jody Roth, the Chair of the Communications and Marketing Committee.
Okay, everybody, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Okay, so we're rolling. Pretty good news, I think. A lot of stuff happening here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this survey that we've done. This is the second year in a row that we have done this on recommendation and approval from the board. Prior to last year, we only did these surveys every 3 years, and I'm sure you'll agree 3 years is too long to wait to hear what we all have to say about our own level of engagement and satisfaction in order to give us the guidance of where we can improve and where we can keep doing the good things that we have been. So this second year in a row gives us new statistics. It doesn't necessarily give us a trend yet. I'm not a researcher, I just play one on TV, but my colleague, Mike Morin over here, who I will introduce shortly from Club Benchmarking, will probably be the first one to tell you that any surveys done with COVID in and of themselves are very strange numbers to try to get your arms around. But nevertheless, we can do that. So this is the first time we actually have year-over-year results, even though some of our own operations have been a little wonky. I want to thank the people that worked with me on this survey, most especially Barbara Nielsen, colleague on the board, and also Tom Catanese, who I know is sitting over there, who is also a member of our Marketing and Communications Committee, and the entire board for their input as we went along. So thank you for that. Okay, let me give you the drum roll. Let me give you the big takeaway from this big survey. Here it is. Surprise? Anybody? This is such a key piece. You don't need a survey. All you need to do is see somebody on a leisure trail, see a golfer on the golf course, somebody on the tennis court, waving high, whatever. You know perfectly well. Oh yes, I forgot, not to mention all the emails the board gets, that Moss Creekers love Moss Creek. We are incredibly involved in the activities that are offered, but also in our feeling, our heart and our mind in dedication to this place. So that's why when we look at these surveys, we like to say, you know, we really are a unicorn. There's nobody else out there like us. You can look at any other golf course, you can look at any other community's financials. Nobody has what we have. So these comparisons are us to us, and that's really what this survey is about. So let's talk a little bit more about why we do this. Everybody wants what's best, nobody more so than Moss Creekers. But sometimes this particular best is a little different for different people, different folks. That's okay. That's why we're doing this every single year. First of all, we have new people coming in, but also we want to have an objective tool that'll help us create a statistically significant, numbers don't lie, you know that, valid picture of the overall membership satisfaction with how things are going. So we measure this year-to-year change. That helps us continuously improve. The 7-point scales that all of you were given in responding to the questions, that's what gives us the hard data. But that's not all there is to it. As you well know, those of you who took the time to add comments and further information to round out your statistical scores, those comments are the ideas that give us to consider how we're going to move forward. So let me tell you a little bit about who we are and some of the numbers that I think you'll find very interesting. The average age of Moss Creekers now is just slightly over 67 years old. It's a little younger from last year when we were slightly over 68 years old. 87% of us are couples. 67% of us are fully retired. There are 9% of us with families with children who are younger than 25 living at home, and that's about 132 of what I would broadly call kids. So congratulations to everybody out there who married off their children last year or kicked out their COVID kids that finally went back to their own homes, because last year it was 11%. And we had about 164 of those kids living there. Our mean tenure, in other words, who's been here, an average half above, half below, is 12 years. I think that's a great testament to people coming into Moss Creek, finding a place to put down some roots and enjoy everything that we have here. In fact, 79% of us live here year-round. So we also asked about what we do, and respondents by topic were that 79% of us visit the pool at least once a year while it's open. 64% of us play golf at least once a month. 54% use the fitness center at least once a month. I'm not in that statistic. Sorry, Mike. About 21% of us have wet slip or dry storage, so actively involved with the marina, and 19% play tennis. Another interesting fact is that 91% of us spent at least $50 in 2021 at either the Clubhouse or at Mackey Creek Grill. So we all do support the food and beverage facility, I think, to quite a degree. But where do we go when we don't eat here? If you remember, we asked you that question. We go to Hudson's. That was the #1 response. Mulberry Street, #2. Skull Creek, 3. Crazy Crab, 4. And then tied next was Charlie's and Hogshead. So kind of interesting what our choices are. I would dare say that outside dining and beautiful vistas and views are probably a good primary driver of where we like to choose to eat. So that's just a little bit about who we all are and how we fed into these results. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike Morin from Club Benchmarking, who has partnered, his company has partnered with us for several years, doing different aspects of consulting and research with us. They're based in Boston. They are one of the country's largest consulting firms that specialize in communities such as ours, as well as private clubs and facilities. So Mike is going to take us through a little bit more of the numbers, and then Suzanne is going to come back and tell us what they mean.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to set my timer because I love talking about this stuff, and I'll just keep going. So I'm excited to be here. I flew up from Boston this morning after JetBlue canceled my flight, which is expected. If you remember, I was the gentleman behind the survey last year as well, which I was presenting to you via Zoom. So this is my first opportunity to actually be here in Moss Creek, actually on your property. Actually one of the second times I've been in Hilton Head too. So I'm thrilled to be here, to be in front of you all, and to share these results going forward. As Jody mentioned, I come from a company that we work with thousands of clubs annually doing financial benchmarking as well as asset management studies. I do the member and employee surveys and then a number of other things. This week alone, I'm going to be in 6 different communities. I fly to Naples tomorrow and then I go to Pensacola later this week. So we're pretty well traveled. We get to see some amazing places, but we have a good understanding through the data that we've collected of how to generate member satisfaction and as well as the best practices for running communities like yours. As I mentioned, I do all of our member surveys, so I've done over 100 surveys, community-specific surveys. I've captured over 80,000 member responses. It's a feedback-rich environment, which we love about it, and it's a way for me to still feel connected to you all because I have about 15 years of tenure in the industry as well. I was on the east coast of Florida at a community for a while up in New Hampshire and whatnot, so it's kind of makes me feel like I'm still connected to you all, which is fun for me to be a part of. So as Jody mentioned, why do we do surveying? One thing is we want to get everybody's perspective, right? So we have a large number of people that live here and use this community, and so it's very easy to be focused in your own circles and then also see each other during passing and then when you're here. So when we do surveys, we're able to capture a large subset or a large population of you all in one place and really hear what the collective community feels about all the different areas and about your experience. It gives us, again, that data, which I'll keep going back to. It gives us firm data to know what we should do going forward, and then again, how your collective perspective feels from that. The other thing is we love doing year-over-year results, right? So we don't believe as a community, or as a company, that you should only survey once. It doesn't really give you much, and that's not to supplement our own business, I promise you, but you really don't know where you were before or where you're going unless you start doing those year-over-year trending. Or in some cases, we work with communities that do quarterly surveys, so they get a rolling pulse of your perspective instead of just one. So it's important to start creating those trend lines and see what we're doing, whether it's little initiatives, improvements, anything like that. Does that have a direct result in your overall experience from there? The other thing too, as I mentioned, it's very easy to hear somewhat of the loudest voices. So again, we really want everybody's perspective. We need your input. We believe as a company that it should be your responsibility as a member, as a resident living in this community, that you should answer the survey. We say that it should be a part of the onboarding the second you purchase, because we need your perspective to allow us to measure how we're meeting your expectations and your experiences going forward. So as far as our results, some things that we learned this year. One is we had another great response from you all. Again, we can't do this without your perspective. And so we had just over 1,000 members participate in this, which you'll see how we compare against over the years from that, and the number of households or properties that are representing that too. One of the underlying things that are yelling and that are overwhelming the results is, again, you all love this place. It's amazing, right? I drove on property today and it was incredible to be able to see and match the comments that I've read and the 2,000 plus responses I've had over the last 2 years to see how that correlates with the results. So you all love this, and when we see this, there's 3 main key metrics that we're going to focus on, which you can see alluded to and bolded on the screen about your engagement, your level of satisfaction, and your level of attachment to this place. So these are the 3 key metrics that were voted on by the board to monitor and then see how those are influenced from the operational perspective throughout. So all of these areas either stayed the same or improved, which shows that we're really hitting the mark. Now we just have some opportunities throughout, specifically within different amenities that we're gonna work on going forward, or that will be resolved with an improvement to the clubhouse, things like that. So it's, that's the biggest takeaway is these 3 areas we were able to improve, which is incredible from that. As I kind of just alluded to, there's some areas of opportunity, but many of those are things that Susanna just touched on. Susanna just touched on. I just flew in Susanna. Susanna just touched on. And so there's some areas, right? We want more of the clubhouse. We want some more food and beverage. We want variety. We want hours of operation. We want to be able to come here after having a drink off on island or somewhere else. We're going to be able to get that with improvements, some golf course improvements, things like that. So the results that we receive validate things that we're already working towards and moving to. And then as I started in the onset, you all love this place. We'll show you a word cloud at the end. You love the camaraderie. You love your neighbors, right? You didn't say that they're, you didn't refer to them as residents. You said we have lifelong neighbors that have belonged here with an average tenure of 12 years. You all have created some great relationships. And the seasonal ones here, you look forward to coming back here, right? You're excited for your season to come back and see your lifelong friends. So that's something that you really don't see often with these surveys that I do, is that love for each other outside of the amenities that you have here. So next we look at the representation and the response to the survey. So we sent the survey out just after Valentine's Day. We keep it open for just over 2 weeks, which is fairly typical. On the left, you see that we sent it out to just under 1,900 members, and we captured just over 1,000 responses. So we had 55% of that total population represented in the results. To get a little technical on you, it's statistically valid. We know that even if we got another 200 responses, the results won't change much. It's a very high confidence interval with a small margin of error. So that's what we can say with that. And then just below that, when we talk about property or property representation, we received at least one response from 69% of the properties. So if you remember, we asked both spouses or significant others in the property or membership to respond. 69% of those memberships or properties are represented in the results too. So it's a great representation across the board from that. Obviously, we want to keep driving this up, but we're very confident with these. I also looked at year over year as just a controlled subset, if you will, about how many of you responded both years. I wanted to look into that, which 750, so 3/4 of you all responded to the survey both years. So that again shows that we have a very kind of controlled response. And when I looked at the difference of you all that only responded year over year versus the total subset of both, the results really didn't change much, which just shows, again, statistically, this is a great representation and response from you all. So thank you. It's a considerably long survey. If any marketing individuals are in here, you're telling me that it's too long. But you have an incredible place, right? You offer so much, and we want to make sure that we're reaching out and servicing and listening to all of you and everything that you do here in the community. So again, thank you. We can't get these results without you. And we hope that next year when we do this, we get an even stronger response rate and continue to get that. And then down the bottom left, if you can't see that, that's the responses year over year. So last year we had 62%, and then the year before, which we'll say it wasn't our company before 2021, but 46% of you responded in 2017, and then 28% in 2013 and 27% in 2010. So we're seeing some great response going forward. You all are active and engaged, and it shows in the results from there. So a quick reminder, or a refresher of what we asked in the survey. So you'll see there 3 on the top right to the middle, right? We bolded that it's the satisfaction, which we'll touch upon first. That's the first of the 3 key metrics. Attachment, which I'll dig into as well. The Net Promoter Score, which is your engagement and loyalty. And then we talked about we asked about each amenity or area that you have here at Moss Creek. Community leadership we have questions on, and then demographics, which Jody already touched upon and gave you a little by the numbers slides from there. So the first one, overall satisfaction. Your end all goal is member satisfaction, right? Obviously we want to maintain home values, that's important within any community, but your experience is what's driving you to be here and to live here, right? That's our goal as a community, and that's a goal of all communities. We want to generate a high levels of satisfaction and experience for you all, which all that is dictated and generated by your expectation. So we need to make sure that we're either meeting or exceeding your expectations from that. One thing I like to say is, so as I said, I'm well-traveled, right? So for me, my expectation is higher or lower depending on what I'm doing. If I'm staying at a Motel 8, for me, as long as it doesn't smell like cigarettes and the sheets are clean, I'm okay, right? It's Motel 8, hit the mark there. But if I'm at the Ritz in Naples and they don't have this origami animal out of towels, my expectation is that they're not meeting it, right? Because I think it's the Ritz. I've never stayed there, so clearly I don't know. But that gives you some perspective of, right, if we're not meeting, if we can't generate levels of satisfaction, it's because we're not meeting or exceeding your expectation, which rise and rise every year going forward. So when we look at this, 2022 is that orange bar, which, as Jody said, everything's on a 1 to 7 scale, so we get averages or mean scores from the results. Your average was a 5.9, which matches last year's average of 5.9. So we maintain these levels of satisfaction, which is great, right? Even with the COVID, the stuff that we're dealing with the staffing issues that's happening across the industry, it's tough to stand in front of boards and talk to them about the difficulties of the staffing, which I'll touch upon afterwards, and to be able to maintain that, right? And all the things you have going on here. So it's great to see that stay consistent. And then also, and we can also say that 92% of you are satisfied with your experience. That's a high percentage, right? That's awesome. One little thing in housekeeping, you'll see that green square is squared around what's called the top 3 box. That's where we get that 92%. We can also do that on the bottom as well. But what we're going to keep doing, though, is focusing on pushing you higher, right? We want 35% of you selecting strongly agree. We want less than 5% of you selecting this 1, 2, or 3, which we're at 6%. So these are all the things that we're working with the community leadership to say, okay, how do we do this? How do we move the needle? And we're going to keep doing that with these results year to year. So this is awesome, right? Not every community that I work with does this. You know, 2 months ago I worked with a community that all their scores were the lowest I've seen, and it's tough to stand up there and try to encourage and move that forward. But I love being able to be here after 2 years and see that we are meeting that expectation, and then you're going to see how we're also growing in other ways. So next is attachment. So our CEO of our company got his PhD in determining member loyalty. So we have an algorithm that actually determines member loyalty. The link between satisfaction and loyalty or engagement is attachment. It's how do you identify with this community, your friends, socially, all these interactions. And so that's that really personal link that you have here. What's very, even more so encouraging from the satisfaction is you see all of these jumps. These were some of the biggest increases in the survey, right? So even with everything going on, the tough time that you may be experiencing with everything in the world, but being here on the community, you have that sense of attachment, and that is overwhelming, within the results, and it shows here, right? This is a direct link to the next slide that we're going to get to. And so this is that link between the two of them, and this is what we're going to keep driving. And this is a result of engagement, right? There was some focus groups that were done after the last survey. There's been more outreach with communication. There's all these things that we're doing, and that is a result. And this is the result of that connection and that engagement to you all from that. And then, so the last of the 3 main metrics, so attachment was the second main metric. The last of it is your sense of loyalty or engagement. So this is Net Promoter Score. This was created by Bain & Company. This is widely used, so if you've flown recently or if you stayed at a hotel, you were asked this question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend X? It's incredibly consistent, I'll tell you. When you look at people that answer 0 to 6, which is quote-unquote detractors, your scores are the same throughout. It blows me away as a data nerd, but it's pretty cool to look at. Same with people that are 7 and 8, passive, they're not going out of their way to talk about Moss Creek, but they're also not going out of their way to tell you how frustrated they may be. And then those that answer 9 and 10 are ecstatic, right? They love talking about it. This is a great metric for a few reasons. One, again, it's that loyalty and engagement. It goes beyond being satisfied. And then also it's a great word of mouth. You all are one of our best and free marketing tools. Same for your kids and your guests that come here. So we want to make sure we have a high score. It's very hard to push forward and move. You can Google this, right? So Flying Delta, before the pandemic, was considered one of the #1 airlines. According to Wall Street Journal, they had a Net Promoter Score of 45. Comcast Xfinity has a Net Promoter Score of 5, right? No one likes dealing with your internet provider. I hope none of you are Xfinity execs, but it's very representative of the industry and the offering that you provide, right? That connection. So when we look at Moss Creeks, as I said, it's very hard to move this. It's something that, again, Google it. I'm not just standing up here and trying to tout you all. It's very hard to move this metric. And what you see here is that we are able to move it up by 7 percentage points, right? So when we look at these scores, we reduce the number of detractors, which is 10%, that red bar on the far left. We reduced that by 4, and we flipped them over to the promoters and increased that by 4, and we were able to get that 7.5% jump. So this is all, like, if I take a step back, satisfaction stayed the same, attachment increased. We know, you already learned, attachment's the link between this and engagement, and that's a direct result of this. So this is great, right? You love it here. You're telling everybody, you're screaming to the roof. As an industry average from the communities that we work with, it's a 44, which is well above it. And we work with a number of communities in the Hilton Head Low Country area. And this is one of the second highest ones that we have. So it's very reflective, right? If I ask you to take away 3 things, it's those 3 points from this conversation. It's great. So I'm excited to be up here in front of you all to be able to share this. So next we're going to go into Amenity Specific. So one thing I'll say is that you will receive a similar detailed summary like we did last year. If you remember, it was something that was shared that showed all the results, summaries of the comments and things like that. So we wanted to keep this somewhat high level. We want to show that, we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to show you that we're communicating results. We want to give you the opportunity to ask questions on that, but know that you'll get a fairly more detailed summary from me in the subsequent weeks that you can dig deeper into this. But we want to be fully transparent and share this with you. So we start with food and beverage on the top. Food and beverage is the hardest area to generate satisfaction across the board. I love saying, so I'm from New England, I love saying that if you put red clam chowder in front of me, I'm not going to eat it, right? Some of you New Yorkers in here don't want cream clam chowder, which I don't understand, but that's okay. That's your perspective. But how does the club do that? Do they have Manhattan clam chowder one week, regular clam chowder the second week, right? So that's just one small example of how do we create your quote-unquote menu variety or rotation while also servicing your needs, right? You have 2 facilities, you have this and Mackey's, that need to be able to service it. So we see across the board in all community surveys that food and beverage is always the lowest rated aspect, and it's consistent here. We do have a number, so even though we're looking mainly at our own results, we do add some context with some industry. We know that some of the results they're receiving are still above those low scores we see across it, but you all want more. You want more out of the Clubhouse, which is, again, it's a great validation of let's move forward with this project. They walked me through and talked about the kitchen and the expansion and moving the storage, and which I think is incredible. As an industry, we do a terrible job of building kitchens. But it validates that. And then Mackey's, you love it down there. It's a beautiful setting. You want more of it, but it's a food truck or it's a trailer, and you want it to be able to service much like the Clubhouse does and more, right? That goes back to the expectation that I said. So when we see these results, which this is one of your biggest areas of opportunity, is the food and beverage. It's also the #1 used amenity at every club and community. Everybody uses it. 90% of everybody uses it. We gotta start focusing on improving that and investing in it. We gotta give them the money to invest and make those, be able to give our staff the resources they can. And as I mentioned, right, staffing's been a mess. We did a whole labor study, and only 30% of communities across the industry are actually fully staffed. The majority of them are at least 30% under their head count, in both 30% for full-time and 30% for part-time, and that's all positions essentially. So it's you're not alone if you are dealing with that. It's something we see across the entire industry for all communities. So those are some of the things. Even though we saw decreases, it validates that we want more. We've got to do. We want an awesome. We already have an awesome, but we want more out of the Clubhouse. We want more out of Mackey's, and that's not going to go away. We're going to keep doing these surveys. Mackey's is going to keep being an area of opportunity going forward. Then we talk about the golf course. So both golf courses receive scores slightly lower than what we had last year. It goes back to the conditioning and being able to have the irrigation to be able to service that, or the resource and all these tools. So even though we see some scores that are slightly lower, this is an area of opportunity that's only validating the work that you have going forward. We're also seeing unprecedented play. The golf courses across the country are getting pounded. We're seeing rounds that are through the roof. Tiger era rounds back in '93. It's great to see Tiger back out 2 weeks ago. But we're seeing unprecedented rounds, and so that's taking a beating on our courses. So make sure you stop and take a chance to fix any divots that you create or someone else creates, and take care of your investment. It's very important that we do that. Other things, the restrooms was one of the lowest scores in the survey last year. We saw a huge improvement, right? You did some work on the restrooms since that, so we saw a huge improvement within that. And then also merchandising, we're seeing improvement with the merchandising, which they gave me a tour of the shop, and it looks like they're starting to add some more variety and add some more casual clothes or beach-friendly clothes, and we're seeing that in the results. It's always female golfers that are less satisfied with merchandise selection, which understandably, right? We just need slacks and a shirt, and women want more variety. But historically, we only give you a little bit of a corner in the pro shop. So these are all things that we are seeing, and you're already seeing things change and improve in these results. So it's great to be able to see that. And then little things too, outside operations staff, you moved around the staging area, so where you go pick up your cart when you're playing and things like that, we're seeing that, right? These are all direct results, and this is why we do these year-over-year surveys from that. Next is tennis and the Boxwood pool. So first for tennis, great scores year over year. You know, tennis is another area that we're seeing a lot of consistency and improvement, or more people wanting to play. Much like golf. So typically within communities, 20 to 30% of residents or members play racket sports. Pickleball is exploding. And so that's one thing, but we're seeing, you know, it is typical that about 20 to 30, unless you are a racket specific community. But so that's very consistent with what we're seeing here. I think it was 19% played tennis here. You can see though, even the scores are all really great. They stayed high, they maintain the same levels, great staff, or great comments on the staff, things like that. We believe and we know the scores are down, that overall score is down from pickleball not being open yet. So that's a direct connection to that. But things are going well. You know, something else too that I've learned is that tennis requires a little bit more investment because it requires more diversity in the players, right? So with golf, if you're a 30 handicap and a scratch golfer, you can still play together and somewhat compare your scores. Within tennis, if you're a 2-0 USTA and you're a 3 or 3-4, 3-5, you're not playing with someone that's a 2-0 because you're going to destroy them, right? And it's not fun for either party. So tennis requires a lot more diversity and people to be able to play it. So we got to make sure we're supporting that program from there. So the Boxwood pool down at the bottom. This was an area of opportunity last year, right? Comments were saying that we want more out of the staff down there. We want some more supervision. We want a little bit more friendliness, which those are the two biggest areas that came away from last year. As we saw improvement both with the friendliness and professionalism. We hired someone down there. These are, again, we heard what you were saying, and we want to make things, we want to act on that. And so we're seeing that improvement. Last year we had comments about making sure that we're monitoring kids' behavior. Whose responsibility is it? Is it ours? Is it the staff? It's such a gray area because you have those college kids essentially, or high schoolers that are working down there. So it's tough to give someone who's 18 the responsibility to reprimand maybe your own children or grandchildren. So what's that kind of give and take within our own community? But we're seeing improvement down there. People love it. It's an incredible area, right? That being down there. So people want more. That expectation is getting up. So again, we're seeing those high levels of service. You can see that they maintain the same, even though we were able to improve that friendliness and that professionalism within the staff there. Next is fitness and the marina. So the fitness, again, remains to offer a great experience. We joke, so 51%, it's great. You're an active community. More than half of you, just over half of you, are saying, we'll say quote unquote, saying that you're using the fitness facility. We know that any new developer now in communities, one of the top 3 things they put into community are walking trails and fitness, right? It's becoming a lifestyle type community. That's what we're seeing across the industry. We as society are living longer too, right? We are more active. We love to be able to walk. You say hi to your friends and neighbors on the trail. So you are an active community, and so it's great that we're seeing these scores relatively remain the same, offering high levels of satisfaction. And then we were able to improve the restrooms also over here. That was another area that we saw some opportunities last year too. So great with there. With the marina, similar scores last year. We want a bigger marina. We want more slips, which we are moving towards that direction. They got approval to put in the permits or move forward with the permitting to see if we can expand it. There were some little things about the storage area, a little bit more maintenance and cleanliness, cleaning up the tree droppings. It's a little small to be able to move around a bigger trailer. Those are some other things that again are consistent coming out of it, but people love it down there. The kayak launch, such a fun offering. So again, the marina, we see similar scores, and that's just because people, again, want it to be expanded. They want to get off the wait list and have an opportunity to have a wet slip down there. And then, sorry, 2 more slides. I can keep going. I love this stuff. So as far as the top is the community elements, so landscaping. One of the top 3 things that why people purchase homes within communities is landscaping. We've asked this many times in multiple surveys. We work with a company that actually does, it's kind of like online dating for communities, sort of say, and they ask you what you're looking for, and landscaping is always in the top 3 things that you look for. Your gate, your driveways, everything is reflective of your brand, so it's incredibly important. I've done countless focus groups, and when we do female only or female specific groups, landscaping 9 out of 10 times gets brought up, whether it's making sure we have fresh flowers in the dining room, having poinsettias during Christmas at the entrance, our actual entrance to the community looks terrible, whatever it may be. Landscaping is even more so important to the females in the community. So we got to make sure we're taking care of mom and grandma and making them happy. So it's important. We can see here we're still generating high levels of satisfaction both throughout the community with the nature trails, the preserves, and so that's important, all of that. And you'll see when we asked you what are your top 3 things about Moss Creek, nature is big and bold, and it was the same as last year. So it's great to see that. Down at the bottom, we talk about security. So we do see a little decrease here. One thing is that we did this survey right around the time of when you had some break-ins, I believe, within the community. So a pretty reactive response, rightfully so, that the scores are a little lower just because of what you were dealing with there. But overall, members are excited. You see those scores, a 6.4 or 6.3 on a 7-point scale. It's great. I drove in and couldn't have been a friendly person. I could have sat there and talked to them for hours. But it's important, right? That's another important thing about living in a community is the safety and security. They are your first touch point on your brand, and so we've got to make sure, and they are, standing up, waving, they recognize your car, all those things. And we're seeing that. Those are things that they're looking at. And then it was already kind of mentioned the speed control and monitoring that and traffic control, which Lenita said the other day, I loved it. She said that put your car on cruise control. I'm sorry if I'm taking your thunder, but put your car on cruise control and see how painfully slow 20 miles an hour is. 28, or whatever it is, right? It is painful. So, sorry if that was one of your notes. I already used it multiple times. So that's one thing. Oh, we skipped ahead. That's one thing with the security to be important. And just, again, it could be vendors, it could be others, but just make a note on yourselves. There's give and take to everything that we see. Next, last of the actual areas, so this is community leadership. So this is another area that we have an area of opportunity going forward. We have some, we want more transparency, some more communication, which this is, again, steps in that direction to say, hey, we're listening to you, we want to share these results, we're not hiding from anything. We're going to keep working on that transparency, the communication, and that experience. It's great to see, again, if you go back to those 3 metrics that were similar satisfaction, great improvement on attachment and loyalty, and we just have opportunities throughout. These are all things that we're going to be able to deliver on year over year. And then when we look at the board of directors, similar to what we saw in the management, it's that communication, it's that transparency, and so whether we'll find ways to make sure that we're getting out in front of you. We have stuff posted online if that's what you're looking for, answering questions, responsiveness. It's tough. A volunteer job for the board is a pretty tough thing. And that's my own, they didn't tell me to say that, but that's my own perspective. So, but these are all things that every community struggles with, is that communication, that transparency, making sure we're out in front of you and being able to service and respond and receive your comments. So, what are your top 3 suggestions to improve forward? All kind of things that I kind of mentioned. We talk about the clubhouse, right? That's one thing that we're already working towards. After the renovation, we'll see. Sorry, so I should take a step back. What you're looking at is called a word cloud. So there was about 700 comments here. It takes the most used words and makes them the biggest and the boldest, so we can see what the trends are within that. So that's what you're looking at. These are your own words. So when we see that, the clubhouse was the most referenced thing as an area of opportunity. We talk about golf, which we already talked about, some of the course conditions that we're working towards over the next couple of years. Mackey Creek Grill that we're looking at, right? That we want more of that. We kind of want more of a full service restaurant there. Some more events. We want that social programming. We keep doubling down on how much you all love to be together. So let's create some social programming. Let's look out for the, even though I think it was 87% of you all are couples, let's look out for the 13% who are singles and create some more casual events so they can be engaged with you all and be out there. So people want that sense of community and drive forward. So it all correlates throughout the results when we see that. And then lastly, we said, what do you like best about Moss Creek? And as I mentioned, the nature, right? It's an incredibly beautiful community you have. I was walking, Jody told me 22 miles of roadways within this community alone. So you have a lot to do here. You have every amenity and you're moving towards it. And so it's incredible that's, right? Beauty, golf, the staff. The staff is the lifeblood of the organization. I can't tout it enough that they are the Moss Creek brand. They give you everything. So we got to make sure we take care of them and invest in them and give them what they need. Friendly community, people, security, right? These are your words. And they're like, I could carbon copy this compared to last year, and it's not different. So it's similar. You all respect and love the community. You love each other. You want to be around your friends and family. And we want that. We want more out of food and beverage. We love the golf. These are all things. So it's I can't keep saying enough how great it is. We appreciate you taking the time to respond to the survey. And we're looking forward to keep moving this forward. We're going to do this again next year. I expect an even higher response rate from all of you in this room and on camera. And we're going to keep seeing what we have to do to work on improving little areas, measuring it, and making sure we're going to drive this forward. Thank you.
Susanna.
Wrap up, I was going to say, Susanna's going to have a few comments about how we're putting this into action, but if you have a question, just raise your hand. Brenda?
Can we bring him
Oh,
down?
I don't know, you're not, I don't know, no, somebody's coming around. Jim and Karen will collect them, so just keep your hand up. Thank you.
All right, as they're collecting, let me just wrap up a little bit about the survey. What do we do as management with the data? So thank you, Mike, for all your hard work. It's been a pleasure working with you. As Mike noted, this is our first year to have comparative data with two similar surveys being completed year over year. Survey data is a great tool for management to use to assist us in areas that need attention and are improving. We are pleased that the overall membership satisfaction level is over 92% and that the membership feels a strong attachment and loyalty to Moss Creek. We are aware, though, that there are opportunities for the management team in all our amenity areas and in areas of communication and overall management practices. Our job as a management team is to use the data to find areas that need addressing, along with areas that have improved where we can give kudos or compliments to our staff. In addition to the comparative data, we will use the comments received to get a pulse of how each of the areas reviewed are performing, keeping in mind that comments can be from the extreme of satisfaction to the extreme of unsatisfaction. I didn't count the comments last year, but this year, but I know last year we had over 4,800 comments, and I think we have very similar, and I've read every one of them. As will John now that he's back, and as will the board will be reviewing those as well. It is our job, though, to find the common threads within those comments that may require action and whether they are operational or capital items. In addition, we will review the individual amenity results with each amenity manager for areas of improvement. Board members will also be reviewing the results and comments, as well as will be working on looking at any necessary short or long-term next steps. Last year, the board approved a policy change that stated that the results of the member satisfaction survey will be considered in annual performance evaluations of the prior year and goal setting for the current year for all levels of department and operations management. This has been placed into action with our most recent manager evaluations. All managers included among their goals several improvement areas from the 2021 survey that they felt still needed required action in 2022. We have other goals as well, but we did include certain ones for the survey. Additionally, we used the feedback from last year's survey to assist with all of our member event planning with 2022. And we will do the same this year for 2023. Barbara's the chair of our SARE committee, and they will be reviewing at their next meeting some of the suggestions and comments for events, and that will help us form some of the calendar events for next year. Last year, some of the comments that you wanted, the events that you wanted, were some food trucks, and I think those have been very successful, and Melissa's done a great job with providing those. As we've started going over this year's data for action items, there are some specific areas in food and beverage, communications, security, golf courses, and golf operations that we have already started reviewing, and I will address a few of those. In food and beverage, satisfaction with the clubhouse facilities and clubhouse dining was lower than last year. This facility will be addressed with the renovation. For clubhouse dining, there are opportunities related to the menu, and those include variety, rotation, and healthier options. And this is for Mackey Creek Grill as well. We have begun the interview process for a new executive chef, and we've been using this data as part of that process to get a feel for how each candidate would address these concerns. Communications. We continue to work on improving communications, but we can always do better. Interesting in the comments, some people say you don't send out anything, and other people say I quit reading because you send out too much. So we have to find that happy median, right? Many of the comments were wanting in-person meetings again. So here we are. We're back in person today. Our board has been meeting in person. Our committees have been meeting in person. And so that has been a direct effect of COVID, but we're glad to be back. Recently, we've been updating our weekly e-blast to be easier to read, and we've created a projects in progress page that's on our member website so that we can keep you, the membership, updated on our 4 major projects. While we did update our member website late last year, we continue to modify it based on suggestions from you. Sometimes you'll call Brenda and say, we can't find this, it's so hard, and Brenda will move it to an area that seems to be easier. So we do appreciate your comments and suggestions on the member website. We try to keep it as current as we can daily with all notices and events. And we also keep our Facebook page updated with event happenings. And if you're not following Moss Creek on our official MCOA social media apps, please click on our social media links when you get our e-blast this week. That will take you to all the official Moss Creek social media sites. Security. Speeding and traffic control, as you've heard, is a concern in the community. We are working with the board of directors on some options to slow down our members, contractors, and our guests. These include more frequent speed patrol and reviewing additional speed data signs for placement throughout the community. Last year, an area of concern with insecurity was with greeting upon arrival. We had a lot of comments with, I like to be welcomed home and nobody comes out. So I'm happy to say that we talked with our staff, we put some action plans in, and we did see an increase in that in the survey for this year. Golf courses. Many of the areas of improvement on the south course will be addressed with the course renovation. Areas of improvement on the north course will be reviewed and addressed as staff is able, pending items that are already included in the renovation scheduled for 2024. One of the items, as I'm not sure if Mike mentioned it, but that was a concern last year, was the restroom facilities on the golf course. Facilities maintenance has worked on that, and that was an area of improvement. Golf operations. Staff visibility is definitely an area for an improvement. Since the survey was taken, the staging area for carts was changed to the backdrop area, which has provided more interaction with staff upon member arrival for their bags and carts. With COVID, with not having bag storage, it caused a lot of members to keep their bags in their carts, and so We're seeing that coming back, not to the level we had before, but we're hoping that with that, you are seeing our staff more up front. These are a few examples of areas that we feel are opportunities for improvement, but I'm sure we will be working on others as we continue to delve into the results and the comments. Thank you again for taking your time to complete the survey and to provide us valuable input, not only to management, but to the board. We do take your opinions seriously, and we look forward to improving on your experience here as a member based on your feedback. I will now turn it back to Linnea, who has some closing remarks and will handle the question and answer session.
I had a wonderful little story to wrap up with somebody down the road here stole it from me, but that's okay. I just wanted to say, and again, I'm reiterating, and you'll learn I'm one of those marketing people, and yes, I think the survey is long, but it's needed. You say things 3 times and people tend to remember it more. So your response is critical. We can get emails from the same 10 people over and over again. That's 10 people out of 2,000. This is getting comments from 1,000 people out of 2,000. It should be 2,000 out of 2,000. So if you love this community as much as the 1,000 people who put it up there and spent the time to take the survey, please take the survey. That's all I can say. We can't do that without your input. And we spent a lot of time, and Susanna just went through everything that, they can do better. And we're they, we're the board, everything they can do better. I'm going to give 2 simple examples that we can do better. And the first is a question, what are you going to do about speeding? We did ask Chief Albano to come to the board and give us a little update. And this is a really sad statistic. 80% of the speeding in here is done by us. Not, everybody says it's the school bus and it's Amazon trying to get to Linnea's house. I am very anxious for them to come, but it's us. And I did do that the other day. I set my cruise control at 27, and I will not tell you who they were, but 2 people passed me on the causeway.
No.
And when they saw it was me, they got a little embarrassed, and I waved to make sure they knew. But it's us. So that's one. The second is, I love animals, I love dogs. They cannot pick up after themselves. They've tried, we haven't trained them well enough for that. But that's something we can do better. And that's again, that's part of keeping our community great. So sometimes it's a very small thing that we can do for each other that makes a big, big, big impact. And I think that's 2 things. When, I live, my husband and I, and I'm laughing because he's sitting over there with staff because I've been seeing more of them than me lately. But I just lost my train of thought. That's terrible.
Speeding?
It got derailed. The speeding, yes. I live on Toppin. And this morning, there were, I don't know how many bicyclists, how many landscaping. And if we were to go around those corners at 27, it would be insanity. I tell you, on good stretches of the road, 10 is a good speed limit. So just keep that in mind as you're going. I'm lucky, my car has the little heads up. I can look down and see exactly how I'm going because it's right there on my windshield. So if you pass me, I'll wave again, but don't pass me. So I'll take a couple of questions. That's when the glasses go back on. One was, what are we doing about speeding? And Susanna covered that. So I hope you take that seriously. We are looking at that, and we've asked Jim to come to, he's over there nodding because I've talked to him a couple times. So we are trying our best. And again, if we slow down, the people behind us have to slow down, so we can do a little bit of that monitoring ourselves. We were asked if and when refreshing of Boxwood Pavilion is planned. As I had said, there's a lot of money being spent this year on the clubhouse, finishing up pickleball, the road work, and South Golf Course. We are building that strategic plan for what should be done for Bostwick as a whole. It's not to say, hey, we're going to need X amount of money and we're going to do it next year, but they're putting the information together that can then be fed into the long-term plan, which combined with everything that Chris Herbershon told you about our money coming in and how it has to be spent between reserves and new capital, we will try. We know that's important. We see that in these studies that come back, but we have to take a careful view at that. So it'll be done, and it may be done piecemeal. It may be pavilion first, a little bit about fitness, something about Mackey's Grill. I don't know yet because we don't have those strategic plan yet. Okay, the North Course is about to be extremely crowded. If tea times cannot be secured, will there be a partial refund on the annual cart plan fee? I can tell you the answer to that is no, because he'd get very upset with me. Because you're finance, you've got all the money.
Okay, great.
Okay, and we get along well. No, what I think you'll see is Tom and the professional staff has taken a hard look at our usage, our typical usage. Yes, we know our rounds are up, so right now the plan is, as you saw, shotguns 2 days, tea times the other. If that needs to be adjusted, it will. And there was another one about reciprocal play, and again, Susanna mentioned that'll be on 4Ts soon. He's working on reciprocal play, and I think a really neat twist is that ability for 14 of us to play with 2 of the pros at another course as well. So all of that is underway, and it'll be communicated shortly. So those were the few that I took. Chris, can I turn it back to you?
Okay. Hello again.
Hello.
So I've got about 4 questions here. The first one is essentially why is interest income so low relative to our cash position, and it asks about CD rates. And payment, little help, but we got out of the laddered CD strategy 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
About a year and a half ago.
Year and a half.
To free up cash for the renovation.
Right, so it's basically sitting in a bank account, and as we all know,
Overnight suite.
right, overnight sweep, interest rates are basically 0. Here's a fun one. There's $1.1 million in employee retention credit on the balance sheet, and basically, when will we get that, and how will we spend that money? So, I'm a little bit bitter because yesterday was tax day, and I will tell you that we filed the 2021 tax returns yesterday, theoretically. And I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hand, but consider whether or not you've received your 2020 refund yet. We are relying on the same people to get us $1.1 million in the ERC credit. So the short answer to that question is don't know, hopefully as soon as possible. But we are beholden to the government on that as far as when we're going to get our $1.1 million. How we're going to spend it, the answer to that is don't know yet, but that's going to go through the Finance Committee. That's going to be beat up pretty good. And we'll flesh out the highest and best uses of that cash, make the recommendation to the board, and obviously take into account the projects that we have that are forthcoming, and as well as survey results and things like that. So TBD on that one. The next 2 are kind of interesting. They're kind of diametrically opposed to each other. And the one question is, with inflation so high, we're all feeling that. I think I speak for us all when I say that. Why can't we cut some expenses and reduce our fee increases year over year? Great question. In the 5-year plan, what we've got is 4.25% increase year over year built in. Our last CPI print, which was I think 2 weeks ago at this point, was 8.5. Very purposely, what I said in my presentation was about 60% of our spend, or operating expenses, is people. And people are what drive a large majority, if not all of, in some way, shape, or form, the member experience. So we're feeling that, all of us in this room, but the people who work here, they're feeling that too, for sure. So the same squeeze that we're having, they're having as well. Also, if you looked at that last word cloud that was up on the screen from the survey data, staff is one of the most important things that we all said as far as our member experience. So 4.25%, what was it, a year or 2 ago, was really high relative to what we had seen historically, but right now it's not looking so crazy. If anything, it's looking a little bit low. So yes, we're all feeling it, but if we're going to maintain that member experience, if we're going to keep investing in the things that we want to see the community invest in, it's hard. It's going to be hard, but that's going to be a big task for the finance committee. And the finance committee is very, very talented. There's a lot of talented people on that committee. We're going to beat all this up pretty good, and I think we're going to come to a really good outcome. We've all got the same vested interest in this community, and you know, I've got nothing but faith in that committee. The last question is basically the opposite. You know, we're in such great shape, why don't we spend more money, is essentially what it says. Why haven't we reinvested in the golf course and salaries? So that's the question. So it's essentially the opposite, basically the same answer. I think what you've seen during this presentation today is that we are investing back in the golf courses, we are investing back in the community. Roads, golf courses, south course, in the immediate future, hopefully the marina. So those things are happening. That's pretty much all the questions. So thank you all.
Have John take a couple.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Got a few questions here I'll try to address for you. The first one is, are there any plans to reach out to restaurants near Moss Creek to get coupons, discounts, etc. during the clubhouse closure? Interesting question. I mean, as Susanna mentioned in her report, we have reached out to other area communities and clubs to try to arrange some reciprocal dining opportunities. But we can reach out to some area restaurants too, and just see if there's anything that can be done in that regard. I'm not sure how much success we'll have at that, but it wouldn't hurt to ask, I'm sure.
I did ask one restaurant, John, who happens to be a member owner here. And he said he didn't get a discount when he ate here, and he wasn't sure he was going to get any money. I won't tell you that yet. Maybe they'll change their mind.
Second question is, will the clubhouse furniture be offered for sale to members before it gets donated to Habitat or elsewhere? And the answer is yes. What we're planning on doing, probably in that first week of May, is to have kind of a yard sale, I guess it's a yard sale. It'll be inside, it's not going to be out in the front lawn or anything, but have certain furniture that we will be disposing of, and that there might be some interest among members in purchasing. We'll have that available in here for members to come in and take a look at and see if there's interest in purchasing that. We'll do that before we either try to sell or donate the furniture.
That revenue's not in the budget, by the way.
And then the next question was, even though we have a significant cash balance, do we have a line of credit, and if so, how much? The answer is yes. We have actually two lines of credit. They're each for $2 million. One is a standard operating line of credit, and the second one is a disaster line of credit. So in the event of a storm, we can actually access either one of them, but the one $2 million disaster line of credit is specifically set up so that if we had a hurricane or some other disaster, we've got access to additional funds should they be needed. Next question is, again, a clubhouse rental question, is who is providing the new kitchen equipment? I can't tell you that today because that's part of what is being bid. There'll be at least, hopefully, 3 vendors that will be bidding on the kitchen equipment. And that's, as Susanna mentioned in her presentation, that's in the process right now. What are your plans if the clubhouse takes up to a year? Can you open part of it up? We'll have to deal with that if, in fact, we do run into delays. At this point, I think as Susanna mentioned in the presentation on the clubhouse rental project, we're looking at an 8-month time frame. But if it does drag on, our ability to, I don't know that we'd be able to open it up in certain areas earlier, but it's something we could explore. It would depend also on what's causing the delay. You know, if there's certain equipment, items, or materials that are delayed because of the delays in acquiring, that may not be an option. And it may not really be an option anyway if the entire clubhouse is under renovation. I'm not sure we'd be able to open a portion of it because the kitchen will still be under construction and the entire interior would still be. But you know, we're hopeful that the 8 months, the 8-month time frame will prove accurate, and that's certainly what we're working toward. Second question was around the same card was, can you make Boxwood into a restaurant? And I'm not sure if the question means on an interim basis or long-term. From a long-term perspective, that's part of the discussion that the group that's looking at a master plan for the Boxwood Park area, the overall area.
This is an interim.
Consider. In the
This
interim,
is an interim basis.
we can't really turn it into a restaurant. We could use it for small type dining with food served either from, if we set up grills and stuff like that, like we've done in the past. But as far as actually setting it up as a restaurant, we just don't have the kitchen facility down there to do that. And that would be feasible. The next question is, when will we see drawings of the clubhouse renovation? We had the floor plans and so forth on the website earlier. We can put that information back up. We just recently got the full set of plans. Can't put all of that up on the website, obviously, but we'll put the floor plans and other information back on the website so that you all can be able to see it there. Then an well, it says ARB question, but it was addressed to me. It has to do with a house on Moss Creek Drive that has a dumpster in the driveway and has for some time. Basically, I think just members expressing frustration with being there and what's going on with that. You know, we've had conversations with the owner. It's a project that is obviously taking much longer than anticipated.
It's unbelievable.
I'm not sure what else I can tell you at this point. And final question, no, two more questions. One, who will enforce the no use or the closure of the south course during the construction? In other words, who's going to make sure that we don't have walkers, bikers, whatever, on the south course? And that's going to be, you know, it's obviously going to be a challenge. Security will be looking out for it. We'll obviously respond to any reports that we get that people are out there. But it's as it is now. We're trying to, you know, we message the community all the time that you're not supposed to be on the golf courses during the daytime hours when the courses are open, right? And we still have a fair amount of that traffic. We'll do our best to enforce it, but we're not going to have somebody out there patrolling the courses all the time. We will respond, I can tell you that, when we get a report that there is somebody's out on the course. And you know, our staff will still be out there working in addition to the contractor. So if they see members out there, they'll politely inform them also that, you know, you're really not supposed to be out here. And it's a safety matter, as Susanna mentioned. It's a safety concern. Several years ago, it was before I was here, but I'm familiar with it just from the records. We had a member riding a bicycle on a golf course that was there was construction underway and we weren't supposed to be on there, and there was an accident. and the member got injured pretty severely. We don't want that to happen. We don't want anybody to get hurt. And we don't want a conflict between the contractors and the members either. So we'll do our best to monitor that, but can't promise you that it won't happen. And then this is the final question I've got. Will the tennis court infrastructure, the posts for fencing, it says specifically, get repaired and painted anytime soon? With the new pickleball courts, they look so much worse in comparison. And that's a good point, and we are aware that maintenance is necessary right now on the fencing around the tennis courts and some of the wood structure. We've gotten to some of it, but there's some of it that we have yet to get to, but it is on the list of repairs that we need, so we'll work on that. And that's all I've got.
Susanna, do you want to
Did you have one?
address the? On the counter.
I got 2 questions about Hargray.
Only 2.
We thought we'd end with this one.
I don't know, everybody thinks I work for Hargray. I'm waiting for my employee bonus from them, and they've never come through with it. Can Moss Creek get an alternative internet service provider in addition to Hargray? So Hargray is the only person that has, or the only provider that has infrastructure in Moss Creek. We have been addressed or talked to by Spectrum over probably the last 6 years, 3 times. And they do not want to actually, at this point, come forward and put in the infrastructure to provide other services to the membership. The membership, the association, it's not going to pay for that infrastructure for another provider. The provider has to put in the infrastructure. So we continue talks with Spectrum. We certainly would welcome another provider. The board would have to give approval for another provider to go through the right-of-ways. I don't see that that would be a problem, but they have to come forward with the money to do it. So currently that has not happened. The second question was, when will Moss Creek get fiber optic cable? Interesting enough, in speaking to Spectrum the last time we spoke with them, they said if they were to come in and outfit the community, they would put in the same coax cable that Hargray has in here. They feel that is the best way. It is more sturdy than fiber, and it's able to offer the same speeds that fiber is able to offer. So if you did not come to the Hargray meeting that we had, we did post the entire meeting on the website. As far as I know, Brenda, it's still on there. If anybody has any questions and wants to be addressed by Hargray, you can contact me, even though I don't work for Hargray. I'm happy to put you in touch with someone. Hargray wants their customer base to be satisfied. Several times people will call, complain, it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. Hargray goes out and they figure out that it's either their router is too old, their equipment is too old, their computers are too old to take the speeds that are trying to be pushed through their home. So whenever I have connected someone, I have pretty much had success with getting the issues solved. So if you're having issues, I would ask that you contact me. I can put you in touch with someone. We have a community representative that I know has helped several of you. And we continue to try to stand by and be a partner with them since they are our provider.
So these are the last 2, because you've been incredibly patient, and I appreciate all of that. So the one question is about when South Course is being renovated, how long will the noise go on? I believe we tell them they stop at 7 o'clock, correct? Okay, so that's a quickie. This one I wish I had left my glasses on for, but I'll do the trombone. Repaving the roads is great, but what about repairing major bumps in other areas caused by tree root incursion? That is actually, as Susanna had mentioned, there are roads that are specifically planned or in plan. We have to, again, go through the bidding process. But in addition to those roads are the eroded areas on the, help me, side of the road, shoulders, thank you, and also where there is major root problems. So that is in the works as well. Yes, we've had, I will say, Bo's done a great job. He's taken pictures of quite a few areas, and that really helped with the with showing our planners where we need some of that short-term fix. So with that, I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank all the staff who stayed through all of this. Thank you for taking the feedback at heart and not taking it personally. I know it's hard to do. So I just want to thank you. You're doing your best, and we appreciate it. And you wouldn't show up in the word cloud as staff if you weren't doing that good job. It's just a matter of everybody would like everyone to do just a little better. So with that, I want to thank you all.